Fit for Life Radio, episode number 144. Gary here.
Will.
And this week we have a special guest, so you won't be bored with us. We have Mr. Jason Wood here.
Hey, nice to meet you guys, yeah.
And Jason is, he lives here in the area in coastal Virginia, and you are a veteran, right?
Yep.
What branch?
Army. I spent 7 years in the Army, did
Army.
3 years in Iraq.
Nice.
Out of those 7, yep.
And then also kind of, I'm sure through experiences of that we'll get into, but kind of help advocating for like men's mental health is a big passion of yours.
Oh, definitely, yep.
Yeah,
that's something that is really on my heart, especially after some of the things I've been through in life, and then just experiences that I've had with others as I've kind of moved through life in the military and then life in the civilian world. So yeah, it's definitely a big passion, and I like to use kind of my platform to raise awareness.
Nice. And you also father?
Yep. She's 7,
okay,
and she'll be 8 next month, and so loving that girl dad life. So yeah.
And do you identify as a dad, as a daddy, as a zaddy?
I feel like those are all three very different things.
I've been called all three. Different.
There we go.
Yeah,
there we go.
Exactly, different things.
Oh man, he could be all three of them. You know what I mean? You don't have to pick one.
There's a time and place, right?
Oh shit.
All right. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, fitness podcast here, and what knowing you and seeing online, and also seeing you, I've seen you around the neighborhood running, and I'm like, man, I should go for a run.
And then you don't.
But so I thought it'd be fun and interesting to dig into kind of your history with fitness, the role it's played in your life, because a lot of times people who look into getting into fitness, or they struggle with motivation, they build it up in their head that it's like this thing they need to do for this moment in time. But the reality is, for a lifetime, it almost needs to become like brushing your teeth. So just be interested to share like where it started, fitness, and the role it plays in your life, and maybe also too like how. Yeah, or maybe you are always motivated, but how that looks for you, and then over the years and decades and everything. So start with, if you want, earlier before we came on, we were talking, and listeners from all over, this is kind of how we can identify the areas. Jason went to Bethel High, famous alum Allen Iverson, Michael Vick during that time frame, so you can age him that way too. If you want.
By your local sports heroes.
I'm definitely in my 40s.
Yeah, but did you play sports back in the day, or where are you at with all that?
Yeah, so I grew up playing sports. My parents had me as teenagers. They were 17 and 19 when they had me. My dad was a big athlete. He was most athletic at Bethel High School and all that fun stuff. And then after they had me, obviously life changed for him a little bit. So they immediately started working, and, my dad was working 2 jobs and stuff like that. But he was always kind of the coach too, always the guy taking me to practices, coaching the teams, all that fun stuff. So I grew up playing baseball and football primarily. Nice. And then when I got to high school, I was still playing baseball and football, but then I think it was my sophomore, junior year time frame, football was showing a little bit more interest with scholarships and things like that. And I mean, just playing in the area, if you go out there and you have any kind of athleticism, and you're playing against the Michael Vicks of the world and stuff like that, other colleges will start to notice.
Yeah.
And so I got a scholarship to a small school out in Kentucky called the University of Cumberland's to play football out there. And like I said, my parents were teenagers, so they didn't save up for college. So I only got a partial, and so I had to pay for another part of the school, which was the room and board and tuition. You got room and board and tuition and all that stuff. So went to my guidance counselor, said, "Hey, how do I pay for this other half?"
Yeah.
And I could do the loans, or I could have done ROTC scholarship, which at the time, this was 1999, 2000. So.
And ROTC, what does that stand for again?
Reserve Officer Training Corps. Yeah. So it's another scholarship that's available that basically committed me to, after I graduated, I got a 4-year scholarship, so it committed me to 4 years active duty as an officer in the United States Army, and then 4 years of what's called Independent Ready Reserve, where I call it the black cloud, where you're out, but you're not.
But you're not fully out.
You're not fully out. And then during the time, obviously, I was in, like, that black cloud was always over there because we were in Afghanistan and Iraq. So So I ended up taking that scholarship in '99, graduated in 2000, and high school in 2000, and then went to college. My freshman year was great. ROTC was doing my thing and playing football, that stuff, and then sophomore year, 9/11 happens.
Yeah.
And life changes a lot for what my postgraduate career was going to look like. And so yeah, I after that, the real focus in the military, obviously one of the focuses is physical fitness. And so I kind of, prided myself on being a PT stud, and doing, the 2-mile run in like sub, 12 minutes and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I always had that physical fitness background. I always enjoyed it. And then there became a time after I got out of the military where I will say motivation was lacking. I completely kind of stopped and everything after the military time. And then
because one thing too, probably with sports and military, is fitness is like an ends to a mean with those sometimes. So I think a lot of times, and they also can be almost a form of punishment, right? So you're probably like, oh, I'm done with this stuff. I'm not working out either, right? Or it's hard to find that new kind of
And you lack the structure, right? With sports, it's like you're being told what to do. The military, you're essentially being told what to do, and then you get out and you're like, no one's telling me what to do.
Yeah. I mean, and it like, so that's a big thing for just veterans in general. I feel like is you take a 18-year-old kid out of high school who goes into the military immediately, and they have some form of structure for however long they're in. Yeah. And then they get out, and then one of the big things is there's no structure, so I can do whatever I want. And now I've gone from being an 18-year-old to now fast forward, however many years, and you're 30 now, and you're sitting there having the mirror moment where you're like, well, who am I? Besides a soldier, you're having an identity crisis. And so that's another big thing with like veteran mental health and everything, just moving into the civilian world is
like, what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. So and I think you see the thing with physical fitness a lot is people will be PT studs in the military and be able to do amazing physical things, and then they get out and you see them 5 years later and it's like, oh wow, you're a completely different human.
We see that with people that have played sports for a long time. They're like high level college athletes, and they get out and they just stop. Completely, and it may be because they've been told for so long, like, and the pressure was so high, like, hey, you have to do this, that they got out and they're like, man, I'm not doing this anymore. Period.
So I talked to my brother coaches. He's a defensive coordinator at the University of Richmond.
Oh, dope.
So me and him have some fun conversations. But I got a chance to talk to one of the guys who was an alumni there who played professionally, and it was the same thing with like pro athletes. You get out, you retire after 5-10 years. And again, you don't have the structure anymore. Yeah. But you're a professional athlete. Like your whole livelihood was built around nutrition and working out.
It's performance,
man. And then you get out and like you see them like a couple years later and you're like, you played in the NFL.
Yeah. Right?
Yep.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
What position did you play in college?
So I actually played quarterback in high school, and then when I got to college, they transitioned me over to safety. I played a little bit of safety in high school too. Yeah. And then between my freshman and sophomore year, a lot of issues with wide receivers in the wide receiver room with drugs and fun stuff like that, and we were lacking receivers, and so they asked me spring football.
Got plugged in.
Spring football. Hey, you want to go play wide receiver? And I went over and I loved it. The big thing though was we played in an old school Nebraska style offense where it was option.
So not getting many looks.
Yeah, so 10 catches a season was huge.
Oh God, yeah.
That was like the equivalent of 100. Yeah. But yeah, it was a good time. I enjoyed my college experience.
Yeah. So I know now, and also maybe before 2020 and all that COVID stuff, were you doing a lot of the not adventure races, but like obstacle course races,
like Spartans and stuff?
Distance.
Yeah. So an interesting story there. So I got out of the military in 2011. 9/11/2011 is actually the day I got out. That was my ETS date. So it's a 10-year anniversary of 9/11, and then like the next month I met the mother of my child. And then we dated for a while, got married, had my daughter, And I was really struggling mentally myself during that time after I got out, and it showed both mentally and physically. I was, again, out of shape. I was probably 50 pounds heavier than I am right now, and not the good, Chris Bumstead.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of stuff for me, and I was really struggling. And it got to a point where me and my ex finally, split and went our separate ways. And I kind of had a really rough time with that. I remember when it happened, I kind of hit the rock bottom, and I remember having I was in a room at a Days Inn after we split, and I left the house, and I remember giving suicide a legit thought, and I had a plan. I had everything I needed to do it, and fortunately, I didn't do it. Thoughts of my daughter, entered my head, and life without her father, and all those kind of things drove me not to do it. And then showed up at my mom and dad's house kind of next day. We started, immediately went and found help with a therapist and started talking through that and started setting mini goals mentally. So I was doing a lot of mental kind of rehab. But then I had a mirror moment where I looked at myself in the mirror after taking a shower one day, and I was like, what happened to me? And then I remember playing with my daughter on the floor, and I'd get up and be out of breath. And so I was like, I got to do something. I got to get back. And so talk about fate. I got on, I'm a big Groupon junkie. If I can find a deal, I'm going to find a deal. And I signed up. I got on Groupon one day, and I saw a Spartan race for 50% off or whatever it was. And it was out at Bryce.
Sold.
Yeah, I was out at Bryce Resort in Virginia. So I was like, I did obstacle courses when I was in the military, and I remember being able to run 2 miles under 12 minutes. And then, so I signed up for that, and then I signed up for the gym membership the next day over One Life Fitness, and I got on the treadmill for the first time, and I swear to you, man, it was like a 15-minute 1 mile.
Yep.
And I was like, ooh, this is bad. And
should have walked it.
Yeah. No, I was doing a walk run kind of thing. It was bad. I had to jump off, do the split thing. You let it roll go for a little bit. It was just rough. And so I went out to Bryce Resort and I did the race. It was a 6-mile Spartan race. Hilly up there in the mountain area. Not as bad as Wintergreen, but I remember specifically, there's about 25 obstacles they have, but I remember specifically getting to the bucket carry where it's a 40-pound bucket that you got to carry for a quarter mile or less than a quarter mile. And I set that thing down 50 times. It was a bunch. And I remember sitting on the bucket at one point, just what am I doing with my life? And managed to finish the race. And I just remember falling in love with it at that point, and then saying to myself, I can do better. And then I think I started signing up for more and more races, and that was giving me those mini goals to train for. And over time, that 50 pounds got shed away, and I became pretty good at it. And I was able to compete not only just in the open division, where that first race I was a top 1,000, to where at the end of the year, that year in 2017, I was top 20 in the elite races. Yeah. So it was nice. It was good to move forward in the physical aspect, but also still seeing the therapist and working on myself mentally was really helping. And everything was. It was nice because the physical and the mental are so interconnected.
They really are.
It was the amount of growth that I was seeing in myself over that time and over the next couple years after was really eye-opening to me and the work I was doing on myself.
Yeah, I think it's important too. A lot of times people always say the gym is therapy, right? No,
the gym's not therapy, man.
But the gym, in fitness, is an outlet in our body. There's the energy that our body needs to get out, right? So it's I think completes to our circuitry to make it have a better opportunity. But the gym should not be therapy, right? You have to have this separate
therapy's therapy.
Real therapy has its own separate benefits, right? But having that outlet goes a long ways, right? And as you see, I'm sure looking back, and also so people know. You're a pretty big guy, so running at those clips, and so between the blend of strength, conditioning, mental fortitude from sports like football and the military, the Spartan racing really is almost like
kinda made
right up
for
your
you,
alley,
really.
right?
Yeah. It was a kind of a culmination of everything, and it was great for those couple years. And then COVID happened.
Yeah, and everybody's legs got cut out from under them.
Yeah.
So kind of over the years, so from sport to then struggling to find yourself, and then getting into kind of sport again, and then now here we are. What role does kind of your exercise play? I assume too you're probably like us, where when you start exercising, it's easier to eat better, because you see the connection of like, oh, I perform better and things like that. But kind of what role does it all play in your life now for you?
I mean, it's a huge part of my life. I mean, I think it has allowed me to do more with my body and do things that I've always wanted to do. So after the Spartan races all happened and kind of that era of me doing those races, COVID happened, and the only thing that really left to do with the gyms closed was either do kind of functional fitness with your body in the front yard, or you go out and run. And so I just started running. I mean, that sounds very gumpish of me.
I was gonna say, but, I just
started running, and I think March of that year, I forget, it was like 2020 maybe. Yeah, March 2020. I decided Memorial Day weekend that I was gonna do a 1 mile on Saturday as fast as I could, just to challenge myself. A 1 mile time as fast as I could, just to challenge myself. The next Sunday I was gonna do a 50K. So I want to see, how far I can run. Like that would have been the farthest I've ever run. And then I was going to do Murph on Monday. And and so
just loaded weekend, man.
So it was Memorial Day weekend. I was like, let's do it. Let's go all in. So Saturday I ended up running a 4-minute 58-second mile. So that was my fastest time I'd ever run a mile in. And then the next day I did a 50K in 4 hours 30 minutes. And I forget what pace that is.
What is a 50K mile?
50K is what?
30 miles. It was 30 miles, roughly. It ranges. You'll see, the official 50K is like 31 point whatever miles. But I ran that in like 4 hours 30 minutes, and then I came back the next day and did Murph, and I was that Murph time did not go well. But
at 4 hours 30 minutes, you could have watched Forrest Gump. Basically, it's like go run a 50K or watch a movie. So I was probably watching Forrest Gump while you were running.
Yeah. So that was actually that weekend. When I posted on Instagram the time for the 30 miles, the 4 hours 30 minutes, I had some friends that were in the ultra running community say, "Hey, that's not a bad time, man. Like that's not something to necessarily sneeze at." And I was like, "Oh, well." And then one of my friends, Jason Hallenbach, who's out in Virginia Beach, he's a crazy ultra runner. He's really good. He was like, you got to try this website called Ultra Sign Up. And so I went on there, and they had all these amazing like ultra races. Found one near me. It was a 13-hour run out in Williamsburg, and it was 13 hours because it was on Halloween night that year, and you gain, because the clocks roll back an hour that night, you gain an hour of running time.
Oh Lord.
And so
it's my nightmare.
So I ended up doing that race, and I did it was like 67 miles in 13 hours, and finished second place in that race. And I was like, man, that felt pretty good. And that's when people were like, hey, you need to really think about this. And so I signed up for the very next year, the Virginia Run for Cancer 24-hour, and didn't know how to really train. I don't think anybody really knows how to train for an ultra race. But I did. My goal was do 100 miles in the 24 hours, and I ended up doing 101.25 miles in the 24 hours, and finished second at that race. And I was like, all right, this is what
I'm good at this.
It's crazy because what's your height, weight?
I am 6'190" right now.
Yeah. So for people that maybe don't know running, he's a big dude for running these paces, man. It's impressive.
Yeah. So there's a few folks that are out there now that do these things. One of the first people that comes to mind, and I actually ran with him in Texas when we did a 100-miler earlier this year, is a gentleman named Nick Bear. The BP supplements guy.
I know who that is.
Man, in my head, I was always saying it Bar when I would see his name.
Did you?
I don't know if it might be Bar.
I don't know.
I think it's Bear.
It's Bear. Okay.
Yeah.
But
and was he like a veteran military?
Yeah. Okay. He was an Army Ranger and all that fun stuff. And but he came out. He actually I got through 80 miles, and I was in front of him, and then he passed me the last 20. But it was good to see another big guy out on the course.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of those folks, and you get a lot of comments, obviously out on the race course from people like, hey, what?
From all us little guys.
Yeah, all us little dudes that are clearly built for running but don't.
It was like, what are you doing out here? Like, and so like that's kind of how like I started gaining kind of the moniker of like, hey, like this guy's a pretty muscular ultra runner, and so that's kind of how that all kind of took off, and I've just been doing it ever since. But I think it's led me to being more mentally fit and mentally. I guess stronger. Yeah. Doing those kind of races because I don't run those races with any headphones in. No. There's no podcast to listen to. No music.
Just you.
Do you train with music and headphones?
I train with music and headphones.
About how many hours a week do you kind of have to put in?
I don't necessarily measure it by hour. I measure it more normally in miles. So when I'm like really training for a specific race. Normally I'll peak at about 100 to 110 miles in a week. Otherwise, I normally keep it between 70 to 85 miles per week. And that's just what feels right for me as a person. You'll see other people that do 50 miles a week and they can do it. And then
just to maintain a little bit.
And then you'll see other people that do 150 miles a week. And it's just, it depends on the person and it depends on how their body reacts to everything. Yeah, so it's like you were mentioning earlier, like the mind and body are amazing things. Once you see what you can do with them and how, let me change, especially when you get to a point where let me just change this little thing about my diet, and you immediately see, that's when you're getting to a point where you're fine tuning, and that's an awesome place to be at.
And it's kind of a fun place to be too.
Yeah.
Just to see like, hey, what happens when I do this? And then you're not so much like when earlier in somebody's maybe fitness journey, you're worried about making changes and like, is this going to work? But when you get to a higher level, it's kind of fun.
Yeah. No, because you just tinker with one thing, and all of a sudden, like, you can see, not only a difference in your body, but a difference in your performance. So it's really neat to get to that point. And there's been a couple times I got to that point this past year, and it's just been awesome. But and then the other part is just allowing me to be the physical fitness I have now allows me to be more active with my daughter. Yeah. And I think that's been something that I can't put a value on. Back in September of last year, I got an opportunity to go up and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And so I climbed Kili and then came down. And then when I came down, me and my daughter had conversations before, like, this is what it's going to be like. My daughter was immediately like, are you going to be able to touch the clouds? I was like, yeah, actually. And so I sent her a picture when I came down of me, like literally at the campsite in the cloud. You can see the clouds below me in the background.
Sick.
And
you're a superhero, man.
Yeah. So I remember coming down from that, and then my daughter had show and tell like a month or two after that, I remember, and she took my 100-mile plaque that I did from my 24-hour race, and then she took a picture of me on top of Kili, and she showed her class, and like I was like, man, that's pretty damn neat, man.
That's cool, dude.
Yeah, I shed a tear when
I would have cried if that happened to me. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I shed a tear with that one.
Isn't it cool too? It's not like, oh, my dad runs these miles or does these times, or it's like he got above the clouds.
Yeah.
It gives you good perspective of what
really matters.
Yeah, what matters and the joy that it brings, and the people that love you. What counts.
Yeah, and so the fun thing though was immediately after that, and this is where being like, and being a parent and being a father specifically, when you see the impact you have on your child's, like not only they're looking at you in a way, but when she turned around and said, I want to climb a mountain, and that was when I was like, oh, okay. So we ended up planning out, like I think it was earlier this spring. I can't remember the exact month, but we ended up planning out going up to Old Rag Mountain.
Yeah.
So and she's 7, so I was like, oh, the scramble, I don't know, and of course we get on the start the hike, and within a mile we come upon this man that had literally snapped, like his leg was. He was under the aluminum blanket stuff. They were calling in a medevac helicopter.
Jesus.
It was like. The ranger that was calling in the medevac looked at me and looked at my daughter and was like, go around. So we like we took the long way around, and then as we're walking, you could tell they're setting the gentleman's leg because he starts screaming. And she's like, "What's that?" And I'm like, I'm like, I just scarred my daughter for life.
Her first hike.
Yeah. Her first hike.
That's a cardinal, honey.
Yeah. That's not a bear eating a man.
No.
So we ended up we got to the rock scramble, and there was only one part where I really had to help her. And then we got to the top, and that was like seeing the pride in her face of like, I accomplished this.
And that's not an easy hike.
No,
really, especially for a 7-year-old.
Yeah, it took us 6 hours round trip for the 10 miles that it takes to go up and down. And when you go on the website, it's like prepare for 10 hours. It's like, wow, okay, we did that pretty quick, and that's with snack breaks and all that kind of stuff. So
and 7-year-old strides.
7-year-old strides, yeah, and she was super happy because she got to do. I have the hiking sticks, and so there were collapsible, adjustable, and all that stuff, and so she did the hiking sticks the whole time. So she thought she was official. So yeah, it was a lot of fun doing that. And then now we're planning. We've been talking about it. She immediately says, "Is this the highest point?" No.
She's ready to go up, man.
Yeah. I'm like, no, there's a bigger mountain called Mount Rogers in Virginia, and so she's like, I want to do that one.
Yeah, you better start getting her a passport now.
Yeah.
She's gonna keep asking for the higher mountain.
Yeah. So we're actually starting to plan, and we've talked about it, kind of an East Coast swing of the highest points in kind of North Carolina, Georgia, the local areas. I'll save some of the other ones for when she's a little bit older, obviously. But I think there's some achievable stuff for her to just to click off the list at an early age.
That's so cool.
When you were in the military, were you always, so you're from here and you mentioned how you got stationed in Fort Eustis, so it's like,
Yeah.
Did you ever go to other parts of the country or ever stationed at any time at other places?
Yeah, I got lucky enough to get stationed. Actually, I was in the Army and got stationed at an Air Force base. No, it was after. So I did 7 years in the military. 3 of those years were in Iraq, and it was kind of back to back to back. I did. I graduated college in May of 2004 and got my commission. The next week, I was in Fort Eustis for my officer basic course, which is a 6-month iteration where they're basically training you how to be a leader and what the military is like. And then I graduated that in October, and in November I was on a plane to Iraq.
Damn.
So it was bam, 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 bam kind of thing for me right after college. And that first deployment, I got stationed up at it was first station was Diamondback Mosul, and so at that time in 2004-05 it was called the tip of the Triangle of Death.
Oh,
so
God.
that was
fun.
Yeah, that was a fun thing. And then did that deployment, came back for 8 months. Did another deployment to Iraq for another year. In that one, we did the gun truck convoy escort mission. So we would meet I was officially stationed in Arif Jan in Kuwait, but we would meet the logistics convoys with the supplies at the border of Iraq and Kuwait, and then we'd escort them wherever they needed to go in Iraq. So I rode too many miles on. I've seen the entire country of Iraq. We took them to Fallujah. All the bad names you heard in the news.
That's where you've been.
We've been there. And experienced a lot of that deployment specifically. I experienced a little bit my first deployment with some crazy stuff, specifically on Christmas time frame of 2004. A suicide bomber walked into a dining facility near me and blew himself up and killed 22 people at the time, and that was the deadliest day in Iraq at that point. And seeing the aftermath of all that and kind of being involved in all that kind of definitely left scars mentally. And then second deployment, like I said, 8 months after, I'm on the roads riding around Fallujah and Ramadi and all those kind of places you see in the movies. And you're experiencing IEDs and getting shot at and those kind of things. And then fortunately we didn't lose anybody in my unit, and then we came back for another year after that year, and then got deployed again to Iraq. This time it was kind of middle of the Baghdad area, and at that point I had made company command, so I was in charge. I was kind of the in charge of 200 plus people kind of stuff. So it was more of I hate to call it a desk job, but it was more of a desk job than being out on the roads. So after that I got and I was still stationed at Fort Eustis this whole time because it was just no time to PCS because I just kept getting put in units that were deploying. So finally got to take a little bit of a break, and my break job was going to be an aide to a 2-star general, which is not necessarily a break job.
It doesn't sound like it.
I always joke that if you ever watch the movie The Devil Wears Prada, where it's I'm the Anne Hathaway character, where you're like
just running
around, making sure everything's taken care of, all that kind of fun stuff. So I did that job, but I fortunately, they stationed me for that originally at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, so close to St. Louis.
Yeah.
So it was nice. Being near a big city for the first time in my life really was fun, and being able to just go to Rams games at the time, Cardinals games, Blues games, those kind of different things. It was a nice experience. We were never really there to do any of it because his command was worldwide, so we were always on a plane.
Traveling.
Yeah, and that was nice because that was the time where he flew kind of military private. So I never had to go through any security.
Oh, yeah.
Just drive the car up on the airfield and we're out.
That's sick.
But then you have a taste of it. And
now you got to go wait in line in TSA.
I remember the first time I had to get back in the TSA line. I was like, what is it? It was like Orlando, too. I was like, what is this? So
it's the worst, man.
But he ended up getting changed over. He changed duty stations he left Scott Air Force Base and came and commanded at Fort Lee in Virginia near Richmond, and he asked me to come along, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then that's kind of when I made the decision to get out of the military. It was just deployment after deployment. Then that job where I was traveling the world, my whole 20s was a blur.
Yeah.
And so I was literally like 30 years old when I finally decided to make that decision, and that's when I had the identity crisis where it was like, what am I? Who am I? Besides a soldier, besides deploying all the time, but like I can't just identify myself as a veteran the rest of my life and live that life.
Yeah, you got to do something.
Got to do something. I was very fortunate that because I had that aide job that he had specific, like he had hookups, and so he was able to get me my first job with a retired 3-star general that owned a company, and so I was able to slide in kind of immediately where a lot of veterans don't have that luxury.
They just you're out and good luck, basically.
Yeah. So I was very fortunate that I had the experience. I had the Rolodex of the people that they wanted. So I did business development for a defense contractor. So I knew all the other general officers from working with my general officer. So I had that Rolodex where I was like, hey, I'm able to call this guy Bob now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was very interesting from that perspective. But that was the primary reason I'd say I got hired. It wasn't any special skill. It was I brought, I brought a Rolodex.
You brought contacts, man.
Yeah, I brought contacts.
That might be the most ultimate skill, right? Really, a lot of times. So what kind of fires you up now? Like, what are you motivated? What motivates you?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is it's challenging myself. Something like let's see what we can. Let's see what we're truly capable of, and then on top of that, how do I do something like something crazy while mixing it in and using it as a platform for things I really truly care about, and that's the mental health stuff. Like I said, like the biggest thing for me was when I had that really rock bottom moment, it was the ability to reach out and then really start talking to people and like opening up. I feel, we talk about men's mental health a lot, and I do specifically, and the stigmas around being vulnerable and talking about emotions and being empathetic and all the different things that a lot of people, a lot of people I believe, think are,
Well, it's a generational thing too of men, right? You can't show weakness. You can't. But you could have a business and a family, and you feel like I have to be this rock, but there's still struggles, right?
Yeah.
So it's either just going to build up, and it's okay to talk to someone about it, right?
Yeah, and that's my big thing is like break the stigma. We gotta have more men come out and say I'm struggling. Like, there are things that are not going right in my life, and I can't just continue to internalize it. And then what that ends up creating is you're building a wall between you and the rest of the world, because it's not just going to be your romantic relationships, it's going to be your family relationships, your friendships.
Yeah.
All those things are going to be impacted by it. And then eventually you're going to feel isolated, alone, and then it's just a rolling, rock down a mountain at that point. And so, I like to use some of these things I want to do to raise awareness and raise funds for organizations that try to help with that. Back in March, I did a 36-hour race, Dogwood Ultra. marathon in Virginia where we did a 3 mile. It was like a little over 3 mile loop, over and over and over again for 36 hours. And I decided.
Is this like a team thing? You're tagging off, or
No,
you're
no,
just
you're
going?
doing
You're just going?
the whole thing.
Oh my God.
So,
I'd be the guy on the group project.
Yeah.
yeah.
That does 2 miles, but the whole team. You know.
It was. Let me tell you, I got very fortunate. Like there was a couple guys that ran the race that I knew, and they were very supportive of me. I didn't have a crew. I've never had a crew for any of these races, so you see some of the luxuries of having a crew, like you know, guys pit stop and somebody's changing their shoes and their socks for them, where I'm cramping up trying to change my own shoes and socks. But yeah, so that race, I decided I was going to try to do the 36 hours wearing a 20-pound tactical vest, like a 511 tactical training vest, while also trying to get 100 miles in that 36 hours. And I did it, and we raised money for an organization called Canines for Warriors, where they train canines that are actually set up to be killed in kill shelters. They save them, rescue them, train them up, and then provide them to veterans in need for service dogs and things like that. So really great cause. And
you had me at dogs.
Yeah, I know, right? See, I mean,
easy.
And this was right. The interesting thing about that, this was right around the time that Channing Tatum's Dog movie was coming out.
Oh, okay.
So it was perfect timing because I was getting reached out to by like a lot of different other organizations, like, hey, we'd love to promote. And then I ended up getting found by a gentleman. He's been a great influence on my life and a great friend, I'll call him. But Jesse Itzler, he's the part owner of the Atlanta Hawks, and he's a huge endurance kind of guy. He wrote the book Living with a SEAL.
If you know me, you know I'm always on the run, up early and home late, so having a 3-hour morning routine isn't really in the cards for me. What is in the cards is AG1. It's a fast way to get vitamins and minerals I need to perform. I first gave AG1 a try because I wanted a single solution that helps support my entire body by filling in nutrient gaps and simplifying my morning routine. Since drinking AG1 daily, I've always felt strong and energized and ready to attack the day. Not only does AG1 deliver my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more, it's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. It's 1 scoop mixed in water once a day and every day. I know that AG1 is giving my body high-quality nutrition. Every batch of AG1 goes through a rigorous testing process, so you know that it's safe. And AG1 ingredients are sourced for absorption, potency, and nutrition density. AG1 is a supplement that I trust to provide the support my body needs daily, and that's why I'm excited to welcome them as a new partner. Here is your chance to start every day this season with a gift to yourself. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/provengrit. That's drinkag1.com/provengrit. Check it out. If you know me, you know I'm always on the run, up early and home late, so having a 3-hour morning routine isn't really in the cards for me. What is in the cards is AG1. It's a fast way to get vitamins and minerals I need to perform. I first gave AG1 a try because I wanted a single solution that helps support my entire body by filling in nutrient gaps and simplifying my morning routine. Since drinking AG1 daily, I've always felt strong and energized and ready to attack the day. Not only does AG1 deliver my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more, it's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. It's 1 scoop mixed in water once a day and every day. I know that AG1 is giving my body high-quality nutrition. Every batch of AG1 goes through a rigorous testing process, so you know that it's safe. And AG1 ingredients are sourced for absorption, potency, and nutrition density. AG1 is a supplement that I trust to provide the support my body needs daily, and that's why I'm excited to welcome them as a new partner. Here is your chance to start every day this season with a gift to yourself. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/provengrit. That's drinkag1.com/provengrit. Check it out.
He had David Goggins live with him for a month, and
there you go.
And you want to. That book is awesome read. If you're looking for a book to read, that's one of my recommendations. Is Living with a SEAL by Jesse Itzler, and he's changed my life in a lot of ways just by the way he, he's a family man. He's challenging people all the time. He's a great influence. I love him to death. But he donated to the cause. He promoted it for me a little bit. So we were able to do a lot of good stuff there for that. So after that event, it was like, well, what else can I do? Yeah. And so I did 300-mile races in 3 months. It was like back to back to back. And then I tried a couple more in like the last 2 months, and my body started falling apart. So I was like, all right, we're gonna give it a little bit of a break. And so now I'm building to November, where I'm going to run 48 hours on a treadmill consecutively. And we're going to raise funds for 2 organizations. And I can't put them out just yet because we're going to finalize everything. But one's going to be a veterans mental health organization, and the other is going to be just a men's mental health organization. You got Movember going on at that time. And
that's a perfect time.
And you got Veterans Day weekend going on at that time. So it just all lines up. And so those kind of things motivate me now. It's the being able to reach back and help others while also challenging myself to go further.
Yeah. So now the why is even stronger for doing these things, which is makes it I'll say easier for you to really challenge yourself.
And it's very interesting. And it's one of those things where in the military, you're always when you go to war, you're willing to lay down your life for the person to the left and right of you. But a lot of times you're not looking at yourself in a lot of those cases. So when you get out, you're still you're still looking to the left and to the right to help others, but a lot of folks don't do that internal work and really how do I help myself? And so it's we got to be a little bit selfish so we can help others.
Yeah.
And it's the airplane thing. And like I talk about, like it's one of those things where when the oxygen mask comes down, you got to put yours on first before you can turn around and help others. And I feel like that's where I was in my life, where I needed to find me, love myself, get to that point before I could really turn around and start trying to help others. Yeah. And that's kind of where I feel like I'm at now.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of fitness, right? A lot of people think that, the outcome, having this, certain maybe body image we have is what's going to make us feel better. But I really think the true magic is, it's the process of you're now taking action of doing something for yourself. And then you build that into your life of, hey, I do this for myself, right? And that is really the kind of the true magic of it, right?
Yeah.
To where we can, the cliche of like, you got to be your best so you can be there for others and things like that.
But it's so true, man. Yeah. That's something when we get new people at our gym, like a lot of times it's a parent that's like, man, I feel like I take care of everybody else, but like I've completely fallen apart. But they realize that and now are taking that step to like, okay, I know I need to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Because if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be there for my kids in 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah. So interesting story behind that. So I mentioned that me and my ex are separated and everything's, we're great. We're great co-parents. We get along very well now. But initially it was kind of tough. I mean, just because I still wasn't in a good place. But over time I got to a place where I'd say I was very happy. I just got to that point where I was like, man, I'm more self-aware. I'm doing a lot of internal work. I'm doing those things, and she noticed, and it was nice to have somebody notice that, especially somebody
that knows
you and is very close to you. But I remember her asking me the question specifically, like, why couldn't I have made you this happy? And at the time I probably didn't have a good answer, but over time now, looking back at it, like the best answer I could have ever given her or anybody that would have asked that question is, you nor anybody else could have made me happy in that moment. You could have done everything in the world to try to make me happy, but until I was happy with who I was and myself,
it wasn't happening.
It wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the thing is like you have to get to that point yourself before you can look for those things and in others. And so. I think it's just a lot of growth and self-awareness at that point to get through and get to that point.
Yeah, and it's tough. When you mentioned when you were kind of at the bottom and you sought out a therapist, so like, is that something that you still or that you stuck with, or like there's lessons from that time? Was it awkward for you to be like, I'm this military football player guy, and
hey, I need help.
I need this. Like, did you overcome that quick once you started opening up?
I wouldn't say it was quick. I'd say like the first couple sessions were definitely probably guarded, and like I'm just gonna let this person in a little bit, and their job, and they know it, is to get like we're gonna find something, and we're gonna really dig down in there. It's like the I joke about it. It's like the Office episode where Toby's talking to Michael, and he finally gets to start opening it up. It was kind of like that, where it was like next thing I know, I'm like flowing with this person, where it's like I'm just being very open and talking about everything, and like you stop yourself and you're like, whoa.
Did I just say all that?
Did I just tell this person all these intimate things about myself? And then I had a couple breakthrough like kind of moments, I call them, where I remember just being like very emotional about things, and then I was at that point I was being open with somebody in private in a room, and it became all right, this is going to be tough, but I got to start talking to people that really know me. And so like opening it up to family members and friends, and then just telling them what was going on, what happened, why maybe things I did, looking back would make sense to them now, like now that makes sense. And then I finally, as I started growing with social media, social media is one of those things where everybody puts their best face forward, and it's there's another that picture that they post takes 5 minutes to take. What's the other 23 hours, 55 minutes look like in a day for them? And people started calling me motivating because of the fitness stuff. Like it was like all the stuff they could see, like oh man, he's this time is great, or this many miles is great.
Kind of like we talked about with the daughter and the clouds, right?
Yeah.
The reality is that stuff doesn't mean much, right?
Yeah. So it got to the point where finally I was like, look, I made a post, and I was just like, look, this is who I am. I've been divorced twice. I've dealt with alcoholism. I've dealt with depression, anxiety, PTSD. I've had all these issues. Because
you think what happens on social media is people see you're in great shape, you get these awesome times. He must be happy. He must.
Yes.
If I achieve these things, if I can do these things, I'll be happy too, right?
Yeah.
And they see that, and then the reality is like, no, there's a whole story behind it, and these things actually don't equate to probably what you're searching for, right?
Yeah. And so it's not the accomplishments that have made me happy. It's not climbing Kilimanjaro. It's not running the 100 miles. It's the process that's gotten to those points that truly makes you happy. And it's you were kind of alluding to it earlier with fitness and everything else. It's being able to change, to make everything, instead of trying to do a diet or trying to accomplish one thing, it's making it a lifestyle. It's something you can maintain the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And the more you get into habitual things and things that are healthy for you, in your lifestyle, and you move forward, that's when you start really making a difference. Consistency is everything.
Yeah, I mean, you're prioritizing it, right? And then and you feel good about doing that. And I think that's where, hopefully most people end up. Because, again, like you need to do these things for years and decades. So, the excitement will always kind of wear off, or, not be the same as, the first time, right? But once you prioritize it, and then you also get that investment back from, feeling better about your actions, and it parlays into other things. For me, way less extreme, but like originally when I found fitness through like getting suspended from school and feeling awful and somewhat, depressed, I guess looking back on it, I wouldn't have thought of it then, but then I went to the gym, you set a goal, you accomplish it, and then you see, how, I had this plan in place. I could probably do this with other areas of my life, right? And then it seeps into your relationships, your career, your finances, and it's just like a underlying linchpin to it all.
Yeah, exactly. I really preach consistency, even with my daughter today. Like it's we are very consistent in what we do on a week-to-week basis, and that shows for her just in being able to like have that level of like she knows this is what we're going to be doing, this is what this is how we're going to live, and like if you can get like, I think that's been helpful for me as a parent as well, being able to apply the consistency and everything that I've had in fitness and everything to just parenthood, just being able to like, okay, this is the way we're planning our weeks, and this is what we're going to accomplish, and those kind of things, and setting those mini goals for her so that she can accomplish those. And then, well, just like anything, it's the make your bed first thing in the morning thing. If you can check that off the box first thing in the morning, you already got something done, and that that drives you to want to accomplish more, get more things off the to-do list. And so we try to set that routine up for her, and I think it shows in the way she's, doing well in school, doing well in, she's
climbing mountains.
Climbing mountains, yeah.
She's right now, I just dropped her off before I came over here. She's on the competitive dance team, so she's doing dance camp this week. And so all those kind of things, makes me turn around and say, man, I'm really proud of the person I became so that I could turn around and have
an example for her.
And you're just a good example. Like the mountains, like I'm sure you weren't like, yelling at her and stressing to her, like, you got to climb mountains. You just did it. And she was like, that's freaking awesome. I want to do that.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I'll say that was great about my parents is they never pressured us to do anything. It was one of those things where it's like, look, all that we ask is that if you do commit to something, and this is what I'm preaching to my daughter now, if you do commit to something, you're all in.
You follow through.
There's no half-assedness about it. You're going to follow through. You're committed to it, and I expect you to, obey. Basically not obey that, but honor the commitment. So yeah, I mean that's another big thing that I love about everything we're doing with my daughter at this point is just how some things that I've learned from my parents have kind of translated down as well. It's fun being a dad.
In that moment, you realize like, damn, my parents were right about a lot of stuff.
What else do they know?
So many of those moments where it's like you say something, you're like, oh, that was bad. Like then you want to call them up and they're like, hey, I'm sorry I did that when I was 17.
I feel like I've had so many moments like that where I was like, man, for one, they knew what was going on, even though you think they don't know. And then two, I'm like, man, I should have listened when I was 12 years old.
Yeah. The fun thing about me growing up and my parents, and it's a little bit different dynamic with me and my daughter, was my parents were kind of growing up with me. Like,
they had you young.
They had me young. So like my dad just hit 60 and I'm about to turn 41 next week. Wow. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, I remember being 18 years old and like trying to sneak into places and be like, wait, guys. Yeah. My parents could be here.
Yeah.
So then, and your daughter's how old now?
She's 7. She'll be 8 next month. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, she's going into 3rd grade. She tested out at the end of 2nd grade at reading at the 7th grade level.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about all that. And like I said, her accomplishments are great, but there's nothing that I could do to repay my daughter for what she's taught me, like over time. And honestly, that night that I really considered taking my own life, she's the one that saved me. Like there was nobody else I called. There was nobody else that came to mind. It was missing out on my daughter's wedding, walking her down the aisle, missing high school graduations, all those kind of different things. And then her being, raised without my influence and what kind of legacy I was going to leave to her. And that's another motivator for me, to be honest, is the over time, I want to be able to leave her with something that is more than just money. Yeah. It's more than just, daddy's inheritance or whatever it's going to be, or trust fund or something like that. I want her to remember moments and remember things that we did. And so I talk about consistency. Every Friday night is daddy-daughter date night, and we go to a little small place here called Hilton Tavern, and she wants to go there all the time now because she's famous in there. Because all the waitresses and everybody knows her, and they know her order. She doesn't have to do anything.
That's great, man.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's ultimately it's what I think everybody wants. They want that. They want to be remembered for something, and something more than just, he was had money or he had the material things. It's he left this behind and these memories behind with me. So that's really the goal now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm sure that that's going to be the case for her. So,
I think so.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah. We'll see when she's a teenager.
Yeah. I mean, things get a little wavy then, but
yeah. No, it's funny.
Then the muscle starts to matter more, right? Because then you're more physically imposing to.
That's the whole reason I work out, guys. Just to be able to because that's rough. I get that all the time.
Then the Hilton Tavern takes on a new meat. Now you got to stop her from going to the Hilton Tavern.
Oh man.
Yeah. No.
Can you walk there? Do you live over that way?
Yeah. I live in
yeah.
Hilton Village.
Yeah, it's
so.
great. Cool little
It is neat
stretch
over
right
there.
there.
Yeah.
They added an ice cream place recently.
Yeah,
right?
well, trust me, I've got the punch cards from it.
Yeah.
The ice cream sundae, the s'mores ice cream sundae is our thing.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
That's something else that I've talked about before too. Is a lot of people want to talk about diet, especially being like a bigger ultra runner, and how do you maintain mass while also running like 100 miles a week, all that kind of fun stuff. And I was on another podcast, and he was like, "So what's your diet? You do keto? You do what do you do? Macro?" Like, I eat what I want. I mean, it's one of those things where like I feel like if people to get overcomplicated with that stuff with like nutrition in some cases, where for me it's the basics. The basics for me, like at the lowest level, lowest common denominator is calories in, calories out. So if I'm burning 3,000 calories, I probably need to take in 3,000 calories just to maintain. And then
do you weigh yourself and monitor it based off your weight? So if you're losing weight, that's what I figure most athletes, and when you're in tune, you can do that. And a lot of people avoid the scale, but I'm like, look,
it's a good tool.
It can be a tool for tracking your calories without having to track your calories.
Yeah, no, for me, it's definitely that. And then for me specifically, especially running during the summertime, it's water loss, because I'll sweat a ton, and like I can lose in a 15-mile run during kind of those peak weeks, I can lose 6 to 7 pounds on a run. And it's like, all right, I know that's not food. That's I gotta rehydrate and do those things. So it's definitely a tool. The mirror is a great tool. Yeah. Let's be honest. Like you can tell something's off.
You try to target protein, I'm sure. Like make sure you protein with your meals.
Protein and carbs, and then healthy fats for me is a big thing, because in ultra running specifically, what I found works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. But it works for me is if I fat load. I had healthy fat load instead of carb loading, because for me the carbs burn faster, and then your body immediately goes to the fats and starts burning that. And
with the endurance stuff, if you're in an aerobic zone, that's the preferred fuel source. Is fat, right? So what do you like to use then? More processed stuff so that you can get the calories in, or do you do like whole avocados and nuts or oils?
Yeah, I do avocados, nuts, and oils. Okay. That works better. The processed stuff I don't digest as well, and I've had issues.
You ever use MCT oil, man?
Yeah. So
that stuff runs through me. It doesn't. You do all right with it?
I do all right with it. Okay. Yeah, I do pretty good with it. So it works for me. Again, and this is something that people will reach out to me on Instagram and say, "Hey, what's your diet?" Like I like almost wanting to just mirror what
do what you do.
Yeah. And it's like, look, I can give you my diet, but are you? What
is it going to work for you?
Are you 6'2", 190 pounds?
Yeah. Is it
5'5", 110?
It's like this is like, do you run 100 miles a week? Like what do you do?
And people forget the context of like all of these variables matter, and it's not just like a 1-to-1. Like this will work great for you.
Yeah, and then obviously immediately I get the steroids thing sometimes.
Yeah,
like, you got to be doing steroids. Like, guy, no.
And the funny thing is now so many people are doing steroids. There's a certain look, right?
Yeah, like, you can generally tell.
And here's the thing: you're an endurance athlete, right?
Yeah.
Just taking steroids to build more, like it wouldn't.
To build more muscle would be stupid.
You, right?
Yeah, and I don't make enough money to be Lance Armstrong where I'm blood doping.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, you're not. I mean, if for him, I can make an argument. You win a lot of money in any sport, right? Yeah. Okay, there's risk reward, right? But for recreational fundraisers,
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm not. Like, and that's something like it's a balance. Like I could lose maybe 30 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever it's going to be, and get better at ultra running and maybe be more competitive for bigger events. Or I could do what works for me and what I want out of my own life and balance the two.
Do you eat frequently, or do you like to have bigger meals and eat less often? Or do you just kind of...
You just feel it out?
So I kind of feel it out, but I normally... The bigger meals is the primary approach I take. I work a 9-to-5 job too.
Yeah, so you can't have your little 6-pack bag.
Yeah, so I mentioned Chris Bumstead earlier. Like, sorry guys, I can't be Chris Bumstead. But yeah, I mean, I tend to just breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then snack between kind of things.
Do you drink alcohol?
I do. Okay. It's not as much obviously as I used to. Like when I was at the peak of everything, it was. I mean, I was drinking alcohol as a means to an end. It was at night to try to self-medicate.
Like I need this basically.
Yeah. It was a self-medication thing and things like that. And I remember I went to the VA. They had to do an ultrasound on my liver. It got to that point.
Damn.
Yeah. So I mean, it was it was that bad. And so yeah, I definitely cut that down quite a bit.
More probably just social drinking.
Yeah.
If you have a big race, you're obviously not drinking before that.
No.
Yeah.
And then they have several different non-alcoholic type beers out there and things that are fun. But I mean,
I asked you if you drink alcohol and you're wearing a Yingling hat.
yeah,
I just noticed that.
Yeah. So Yingling, good Yingling, sponsored by. But no, they've reached out to me on several occasions to do like collabs with them and stuff like that. So they've been a great company. So yeah, obviously I don't cut it out completely.
You ever go down to Ironclad or anything down there?
Yeah. I've been there like once or twice. Tradition actually, right around the corner here. Me and my daughter have gone to several times, specifically because everybody brings their dogs, and she loves petting the dogs, and then she loves food truck food, and then they always have live
games
music,
and
so
stuff,
games and all that. So the atmosphere is what she's after. So yeah, we go there sometimes and just hang out and for friends and everything. So yeah, I mean it's still in my life. It's definitely not consuming my life like it once did. Yeah. And for a lot of people that's a tricky slope. That's a slippery slope. It's how do you coming off of basically alcoholism and being an alcoholic to like how can I make this just how can I taper this down to just one drink because and I struggled with that for a while too, and then again fitness and doing the ultra running kind of has really helped because it's given me that goal and that impotence to be like, all right, I gotta perform, so I can't do a 6-pack a night thing. So yeah, I think that's helped a lot too.
Because then I think a key with alcohol is, it can't just be about the alcohol, right? Like, so you normally want to tie it to, hey, it's a social event and it's about being around other people, maybe relaxing or enjoy the taste, and separating it from, getting drunk and trying to, use alcohol as therapy and things like that, right? So, but it's cool to see, your balance, with, and again, that's the thing, right? Someone could look at you now and, online on the internet and, all these things going in the balance, but there's a whole story behind there, right? And there's a
lot of ups and downs to get to the balance.
Even with fitness too, I see now, we deal mostly with like gen pop, right? And you get a lot of people who weren't athletes growing up, and they don't understand, and then they don't want to start because they're like, well, I'm not going to be a world-class ultra runner. What's the point of even starting, right? And there's tons of reasons, but you also have to understand people's past, right? You were fortunate enough to grow up playing sports, building this aerobic base, building mental fortitude. There's decades of experience physically and mentally that go into where you're at now, right? And someone just started, they should never feel discouraged. It's just understanding that, right?
Yeah, and so one of the things that I mention to people all the time that are getting into a fitness journey is you can't expect the whole world to change overnight. Like you're not gonna be you're not gonna get one lift in or one run in and all of a sudden look or feel the way you should. It takes time, and that's why a lot of people that will immediately say, I want to lose 50 pounds. All right, but let's break that down into smaller goals. Let's more achievable type things, and over time you'll get to 50. I mean, it's not going to be like in a month. It might take you 2 years.
Because the reality with that too is people don't really want to lose 50 pounds. They want to lose 50 pounds of fat, right? So it's also like, hey, like. It's better to lose it slow, and reframing losing it slower will get you where you truly want to be. But then also understanding, well, does that person even cook any of their meals, right? So part of the hang up could be, hey, you got to develop some of this lifestyle stuff. You got
to grocery shop.
Grocery shop and prepare meals and in portions and listening to your body, and that stuff takes time, It's just not as simple as like you said, how people always ask you like, what's your diet like? Well, what if you cook most of your meals and this person doesn't cook any? So even if they know your diet, they might not be able to execute it, right?
Or what's your training program?
Well,
they've never ran a day in their life, and they're trying to figure out what you do, and they're going to emulate it. It just doesn't make sense to do that.
Like for people that are first starting out, especially, like you got to almost imagine yourself like I joke about the movie Ghost. Like you're a hard piece of clay, and to mold that, it takes time because you gotta get it heated up. You gotta you gotta really start manipulating yourself in that piece of clay before you can actually get it to actually start to take shape. Same thing with your body. You gotta put that time in to really work it before it really takes shape. And over time, yeah, you'll get to that point. I mean, maybe not all of us will get to that point where, like, for me, like, I can change this one little thing, and you're like, boom, like, you can see this result.
Yeah.
But trust me, you'll get to a point if you're really making it a lifestyle where you go back to something that's, processed or old, foods that you used to eat, and you'll be like, man, my stomach did not like that kind of thing.
And that's a great place when you get there, because you start making decisions not necessarily based off of taste and stuff is the number one priority. You start basing off of how you feel, right? Yeah. And creating these dopamine circuits for those reasons.
And how is this going to affect my training? Like for me, like neither of us really drink a lot. Like, but for me, if I drink the next day, like I just feel like garbage. No matter if I got like super hammered or whatever, I feel off, and that's enough for me to just not really want to do it.
Yeah.
Like I just despite like getting drunk and having fun with your friends is great, but it's almost not worth the next day of just me feeling not good. Yeah. So.
And normally my long runs are on Sunday. So like I have my daughter Friday night. So it's one of those things where if I go out on Saturday, like I'm not like I don't want to because I know I got to go turn around and run 20 to 30 miles the next day. It's like, no, guys, I'm good. I have done that once where I did a race after being out one night with some friends.
How'd that go?
And it was fun. Actually,
PR'd.
PR race.
So it's like I reached out to my friends after. I was like, maybe we need to do this more. But it was actually the Nolan Trail 50K.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
You don't happen to know a guy named Joe Roth, do you?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he's a client in our gym, and he's really into all the ultras. You probably would
you would probably recognize him. Small, he's bald. I say small.
Yeah,
I mean, he's like 5'8",
like my size. He's like 5'9", 5'10", 160.
Yeah,
but he's really into he does that race.
I've probably seen him out there and about. Like it's been that community is it's a interesting community to say the least. And you're talking about mental fortitude. One of the things that you see a lot is the folks that are really successful at ultra running and the longer distances tend to be older, on the more like late 30s, early 40s side, and you get some superhuman younger folks obviously, but a lot of the people that do it and a lot of people that excel at it are older. And I remember Joe Rogan was having a podcast interview with a famous runner called Courtney Dauwalter. And he was telling her, like, you gotta have some kind of demon. You gotta have some level of struggle there to excel. And I kind of agree with him in that case, where it's like being younger and maybe not have dealt with struggle and adversity as much in your life. When you get to a 100-mile race and you get to mile 80, and that that's going to be the hardest thing you've probably ever done in your life at that point. I can't speak for everybody. But for a lot of people it is, whereas when you get 30s and 40s, you've been through some things, most likely. Yep. And so that mental fortitude has been built over time, and you get to mile 80 and you're like, all right, 20 more miles, let's do this kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that's probably, that's one of my theories about what
I think it's pretty sound though. Like that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, and trust me, like, especially running without headphones for 100 miles, running without headphones and all that stuff for the 36 hours specifically. Yeah. That one was, I'd say, the toughest race I've ever done, just because I'm wearing a weight vest. That thing's just wearing you down over time. It's the course was rather hilly. We gained 13,000 feet of elevation over the course of the 100 miles. And it's a 3-mile loop, so you're just doing it over and over and over. You get to see your truck. You get to see your truck every hour, basically.
Oh, my God.
You decide you hate it and have to go buy a new one.
Yeah, you're like, God, I just hate seeing that stupid thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to a point at hour 32 where I actually started hallucinating. Like, it was and some ultra runners have told stories like this, and, like, I had never experienced it until that race. And I got to mile 32, and the trees start turning into things. The moss on the trail started turning into like cartoon characters. I was like seeing The Simpsons, the Addams Family.
Did it freak you out, or were you okay with it?
I was okay with it until, I swear to you, I saw a uncooked like Purdue turkey on the side of the trail, like waving at me, and I was like, I gotta stop. Like I was like, I don't know what the hell this is going through my mind. No. So at like hour 33, I jumped in my truck real quick. I set my phone for 15 minutes, and I fell asleep almost immediately. And I swear to you, I went through a whole REM cycle. I dreamt,
Wow.
and it was crazy dreams. Like my life was being.
Did it feel like you were asleep for like 10 hours?
Yes.
What a weird feeling.
It was crazy. When I woke up, literally, like, well, one of the dream I was having, it was crazy. Have you ever seen those Japanese game show hosts? Like, they're like,
yes.
Frantic.
Yeah. They were narrating my life. Like, it was like, what is going on? Wow. And so it was just a wild experience. Like, went through the whole everything. Alarm sounds. I wake up. Let's get back to it.
Ready to go?
Feel good again. Let's go.
Were the hallucinations like over then?
Yeah.
Have you ever had it happen since then?
No, but I think I'm prepared for it to happen on the 48 hours.
Are you excited for it to happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, if I want to see more uncooked turkey, Courtney.
Do you look at turkey different now?
Yeah, I do now. Like, I'm like Thanksgiving's going to take on a whole new approach this year. But no, so Courtney DeWalter, she's really, she's another one that if you're looking to follow somebody who's really just mentally just different, like just strong. Like David Goggins is one of them.
Yeah, he's probably the most known one.
But Courtney's so unassuming and so just polite, nice to smile. Doesn't give you the David Goggins vibes at all. But I promise.
Yeah, because he's like a hardened dude.
But I promise you, that woman is one of the hardest people on the planet. Like her ability, and she talks about enjoying the pain cave, and just enjoying the moment of being in that.
Suffer a little bit, yeah.
And she's been very popular in talking about some of the hallucinations she's had, and she looks forward to them. Wow. And
it's kind of like, what's the Aubrey Marcus with On It?
Oh yeah.
What's the thing that they always go do?
Ayahuasca. Yeah. Somebody told me, like, when you get to that point physically, when you're starting to hallucinate and stuff, like your body's actually releasing DMT. And so I was like,
okay, that makes sense.
Now
connection.
Now I sound like Joe Rogan. But yeah, so I mean, I'm expecting it to happen during the 48 hour. Being on a treadmill in the gym is probably going to be a little bit different. I don't know how that's gonna.
I feel like it's got to be harder.
Yeah,
just like static, no scenery changing.
Yeah, that's I think one of the things for me when I was coming up with the idea was first of all, it's people have done it, and there's world records and stuff like that. So I mean, it's not a popular thing to do. You don't see a lot of people like there is a world championship like treadmill race that's 48 hours and stuff like that.
What kind of treadmill are you gonna run on? Like
so we're gonna do at One Life the treadmills. I forget what I think they're the Nordic tracks.
Okay, but not like a Woodway where
no,
you're the
no. God no. Yeah, no. We're gonna do the belt one. That
And you set the pace and everything.
Yeah. So we're gonna do that. The Woodway and stuff like that. That would have just been. I gave that 2 seconds of thought and was like, nope. So we're gonna set a couple of treadmills up side by side because you don't want one to fail.
Yeah, the belt starts to wear or move or whatever.
Yeah, so we're gonna set them up side by side and have one on standby just in case we wear out 2 treadmills somehow. But we're gonna do that, and then we're just gonna try. I'm trying to plan how we can share data with people and things like that, like wearing how can we get the watch data to show up on a TV screen?
Yeah, so it's almost like a scoreboard. And
so people can come in and be like, this is crazy. And then obviously I want to have some sponsors behind it all, and so we're working all that right now. Trying, I got one person trying to set up a website. Nice. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Are you going to do it on what day of the week is it?
Because we got to work on gym hours. Because they close I think at 8 p.m. on Fridays or something like that. So we're going to do start at 8 p.m. on Wednesday to 8 p.m. on Friday.
I'd say a Sunday would be nice because then you can watch football the whole time.
Yeah. No, we got to work around the 24 hour hours thing. So they've been very helpful in that. One Life's always been had my back ever since I started working with them after they learned my story and how I got introduced to One Life and everything. So they've been awesome. And
I used to work there for about 6 years when it was Gold's Gym.
Oh yeah,
back in the day.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, no, but yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then after that, I don't know. We're given I hate to put myself too far ahead of where I'm what I'm already thinking, but we're definitely giving some thought into next year and what we can do. Adventure racing is starting to come to mind. I want to do some of those multi-day adventure race type events. I have a friend that I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with. She did it's called the Jungle Race. It's a multi-day event in the Amazon jungle. And
That sounds wild.
Yeah, I got a chance to go down to the Amazon 2018, I think it was. I volunteered with an organization called Wine to Water, and it's basically an organization that's based out of Boone, North Carolina. That the guy who founded it is a bartender, and he was taking his tips from the bar and turn around and doing water projects in the Sudan and other places. And so I found that organization. We went out to the Amazon jungle. And you talk about a life-changing type experience. That was one of the things, one of them, one of the experiences that I had that really changed my life is going out to the Amazon, being without these cell phones for 10 days, without electronics, living in a tribal community where, it's everybody is working and living together to help each other. And then, just sleeping in a hammock every night next to a tributary off the Amazon River. But that ability to really connect with myself and not be connect, the wildness of the world around you and everything, and then really just seeing the community. And this is something I think is lacking. And another thing that affects veterans specifically when they come home is the community all helps each other to grow and achieve and do and survive really. And so the neighbors are like they're all. Everyth's community based, and you come back to the States, and you get to a point where I can go to a lot of people and be like, hey, when's the last time you talked to your neighbor?
Yep.
And it doesn't really exist. I mean, people are more connected with somebody on social media who lives in Germany than the person who lives next door.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's wild that way, and so you get to a point in the military where. Again, everybody, it's a family atmosphere. It's everybody's. You go to war and you're willing to lay down your life for the person to the left and right, and you're looking after each other. It's a tight knit community, and you're all taking care of each other. And then you come back to the States, and if for me, I'm fortunate. I live here in a military community, so there's a lot of military resources, so people understand, and people you're more willing to talk about things. You live in middle of nowhere, Iowa, and you're the only.
It's just not there.
You're the only veteran. Good luck.
Yep.
And so, I think that's another part of the struggle. Is just how do the communities accept and fold veterans back
and
in
help
and help, and there's organizations out there that do great jobs of using veterans and apply because it's all purpose-based in a lot of cases. When you're in the military, everything has a purpose.
Yeah,
Yep.
They give one job.
Yeah, and then you come back home and you've lost your purpose in a lot of cases. How do we provide veterans with that sense of purpose again? Like, how do we get them involved in their communities again? Whether whether it's standing up a nonprofit or working in a fire department or police department or things like giving them that sense of purpose. And moving them forward with their life is just a big piece for me. So
and the thing with that too is the skills and experiences that veterans have to offer.
Yeah,
it's worth these communities getting them back into that place to where they can serve and have these skill sets that a lot of that will help businesses and communities and get that out of people because it's in there and it's helpful. And
the one thing I'll give the military credit for, and obviously there's toxic leadership that's out there, and everybody talks about that and some of the bad things that happen in the military. But one of the things I will give it credit for is it does do a great job of providing leaders.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. Like, I was in the military for 7 years. I was an officer, so I got a chance to lead, be a leader, but it wasn't necessarily me. It was the leaders that were under me that made me successful. It was the individuals that led the smaller teams and things like that I was in charge of. Because if they are not successful, then I'm not successful.
Yep.
So as a leader, it's providing them with the resources and removing any obstacles and doing the things you need to do there to make sure that they're successful. So one thing we're severely lacking, I feel like, in our communities today, leadership.
Yep.
And we're I don't want to get political, but I feel like it's everything, everywhere, kind of thing. It's we're lacking leadership, and we need strong leadership to be successful, not in our local communities, and then that eventually will expand
Spread,
out
Yeah.
to bigger things. So yeah, so that's one of the things. You're right. I think that if we can just use the resources we have in veterans being back in their communities, that'll be a strong resource to help us grow.
Because they have that experience with leadership, you know, and that is, if you don't have it, it's hard to earn or learn, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's. I mean, you guys are in the fitness community, and I've been involved in a lot of fitness events. For me, it's very easy to pick out somebody and be like, he must have been or she must have been in the military.
Oh yeah.
Like
easy.
It's
Somebody walks into the gym that wants to join, I can usually 100% I know they were in the military.
Yeah, there's a look about them, and then once you get into like that, especially like when you're doing like team type events and things like that, you're almost like, who'd you serve with? Kind of thing.
Yeah, like who's taking charge right now, and it's that person.
Yeah, my father-in-law, he was retired Army, like pretty high up, and he has a certain energy and aura and vibe about him that's quite obvious.
That's just one of the I hate to typecast people, but like normally, especially in this area, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up here, you pretty much assume everyone's here via the military, right?
Yeah.
So it's rare when you meet someone who's like not military based. But,
yeah. So I mean, like I think looking to continue the journey here and see what's next, and I'm just in a really good place in my life, and I have been able to start growing a more kind of robust social media following, which has helped expand the platform and given me more of a soapbox to talk about these kind of things. So I mean,
that's like a very positive use of social media.
Yeah. I think again, it's for me, like you can be an influencer, but what are you influencing? Like what are you what are you
impacting?
What are you impacting? What are am I just showing pictures of my muscles?
Yeah, you're showing your abs
every day with no real no real purpose,
substance behind it.
Yeah.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah.
Or we joke about something. If you got a nice booty, you
just post up a pic and you're like, oh, Wednesday, and that's it.
Yeah, the captions are always just like days of the week.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, no, I always joke about like the person who takes the booty pic or the abs pic and then posts the inspirational quote under it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
Nobody's reading the caption.
Nobody's reading the caption.
So well, we appreciate your time coming on. And if someone is interested in kind of learning more about you or seeing what you're up to, is the best way kind of for them to check you out on Instagram, reach out there.
Yeah.
And that's Jason Wood, and the Instagram handle is jfloydwood, which we'll also link to in the show notes. And U.S. Army combat veteran. Also, the muscular ultra runner. But
you just ran with that.
Yeah, I just ran with that.
You might as well.
Yeah. Branding is everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, we thanks for having. I know I learned a lot, and it's always great to hear a story like yours. And like you said, it's good even when we know you can see everything. That you're putting out there, but everyone has a story, right? And it's not all rainbows and sunshine, right? So I think it's great for people to hear that and see that everything's a journey, right? So wherever someone is right now, and also if you're struggling, right? If you're at a rock bottom, reach out and find someone to talk to.
And there is like a way up and out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like the first thing, the first step, like you said, reach out, talk to somebody. Don't internalize it. Don't let it fester. Talk to someone you trust and someone you can confide in and find the help.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, or eventually you can also, hit us up on the socials, and maybe we'll have to do a round 2, because we probably could have gone another hour.
Yeah, we could have doubled that time. I think.
But I know a lot of times too, and we'll see how some of your races and fundraisers go, and also help promote some of that stuff. So
I appreciate it, guys. I really enjoy the podcast, and you guys helping me out.
Cool. Yeah. All right, Jason. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.
We'll see you next time. As always, thanks for listening, guys. If you want to learn more, check us out at coastalfitnessva.com or garydeagle.com. We'll see you next time.